I see all of these posts on your LinkedIn and stuff like that, and I kind of wondered off the bat whether there is, how did this all come about? How did you end up doing what you're doing now? But because it feels like a route that a lot of young people might not envision themselves in.
No, neither did I, to be brutally honest. So I was always, let's say, mechanically minded from a young age, and I think that's down to having a dad that was a maintenance engineer and sort of always interested in sort of watching him sort of deconstruct things and reconstruct things and fix things and that sort of thing. And the start of my career, I probably for the first 10, 12 years, Will, to be brutally honest, I was more machining based and sort of manufacturing planning biased. That's where my background started and my beginning of my career, and sort of supply chain planning type roles. But then, funny enough, I had when I first joined a previous employer, we did something called MLP, which is like multilingual programming or something like that. And that's all about what sort of characteristics you are in terms of your personality. And as soon as I walked in, there was a guy called Scott White, absolutely great guy, and sort of 3 or 4 sort of workshops and no slides, just literally around a table talking for like 4 sessions, a bit like counselling, really.
Yeah.
And, as soon as I walked in, he sat down and he went, "You're kinesthetic, aren't you?" I went, "Pardon?" He went, "You're kinesthetic." I went, "What do you mean by that?" And he's like, "I can just tell by the way you are, like not shaven, the way you dress, sort of thing." Not saying
Almost seems a bit rude.
Yeah, not exactly. Yeah, I was like, trying to say I look scruffy, and he's like, no. He says, and apparently kinesthetic traits are always moving. Do you know what I mean? Everything, you've always got to be moving, you've always got to be progressing, you've always got to be doing something, be that physically, mentally. Do you know what I mean? You can't sit still. And I sat and thought about it, and I was like, do you know what? That is me. I just can't like switch off when I've got my head into something. And then we sort of stumbled into it, let's say. So I stumbled into it. So like my previous employer before this, it was really like blank canvas. Well, pretty much through my career, I've always been a blank canvas. What can you do? Make it happen. Can I get back to your point? Yeah, make it happen. Where this one was more logistics based. So it's real, let's say, first time I'd been given sort of the complete freedom to just do what I saw fit, let's say. You know what I mean? So I got a lot of trust put in me by the guy that took me on, and yeah, it's just sort of opened my eyes a bit really to what's possible. So started off with a few sort of ideas and initiatives, and then you start to dreamscape from there, don't you? And you start to evolve and things like that, and just success just followed success, and implementation just followed implementation, and taking the team along with me. So you've got guys, and it's similar to the sort of where I am now. You've got guys that have been around for like 20, 30 years, and you're talking about all these grand ideas, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that'd be brilliant, but it'll never happen here." But then when they start to see that change materializing, and you get this little small wins, and then the small wins turn to big wins, and do you know what I mean? And then you're spinning multiple plates. So one idea becomes 3 ideas, and 3 ideas actually materialize into implementation, and then you've still got, oh, so what's next? And that's the kinesthetic side in me. So what's next? Not rest on your laurels. What's next? So every plan's always got 3 or 4 iterations to it, or 3 or 4 steps to it. It's not just, well, we'll do this and then we'll stand still. It's no, we'll do this, but then we'll follow on with that, and that. So it was more luck. And I suppose some people would say, just, and I look at this quite reflectively now, and probably just say it was part of my journey, really, in terms of where I am.
I find a lot of people in the kind of supply chain space that they've started off almost like on the ground floor and literally work their way right the way through the business. And given that there are so many people that seem to follow that journey, yours feels slightly different in, as you said already, you're a doer. You're creating really innovative concepts within the business. What's the difference between just sort of drifting up the business and actually elevating yourself to do something really excellent?
I think opportunity is one. So you're right. I earned my stripes. So I mean, I've been in the trenches, and I still think there's room to be in the trenches. And I think as a leader, you've got to be able to get into the trenches. I always say the make of a good team, and what I always look for in my team is, if I was in the trenches, who do I know would be stood right next to me in the middle of it, in the thick of it. So we sort of we take it from there. And I think, getting back to your question, I think it's more about, I think it's a desire within. Do you know what I mean? I think a lot of it, I go back to my old man, do you know what I mean? A lot of my desire and things like that comes from within, and that a lot of it stems from growing up as well. So I wasn't the most educated kid in the world growing up. In fact, I couldn't read and write till I was like 8 or 9. Even though I ended up going to the university, and I did my master's degree, and God knows how, but I did. But I think I always had to work at stuff, and I've sort of took that onto and no one's ever given me, nothing's ever fell in my lap. Do you know what I mean? In any way, shape, or form, I've always earned it, or I've delivered it to prove the point. So, worst thing anyone could ever say to me is it can't be done. Because I will go out my way and be obsessed to make sure that I prove you wrong. So I think it all just stems from an inner belief, and that inner belief all stems from success, really. Do you know what I mean? In terms of seeing ideas and things that I put down, I call it on fag packets, or do you know what I mean, or just on whiteboards, ideas, or could we do this, could we do that? And then luckily for me, finding the right partners like yourselves and other companies that I've worked with that are still part of my network now, and I involve in projects throughout that get it, and more importantly get me, and aren't afraid to, or don't try and just tell you what's on the shelf. So are prepared to actually take your idea and your concept and innovate with you. So they don't just try and sell you what's on the tin. They're prepared to actually put some skin in the game with some time and effort, and listen to you as a customer and develop that solution. And on a couple of occasions, like I say, with the partners that I still use today and incorporate into the business, I mean, we've had some good successes, which has been successful for them as well, in terms of them being able to market those solutions or develop those solutions for other customers as well. So yeah, I suppose it's just a mindset of just continually looking for, I don't want to say utopia or perfection, but that's what I want to try and get to. Do you know what I mean? I don't know what that looks like, but I'm trying to find that way. And I think social media is a big influence in this time of day. And I get some real good ideas from sort of posts and sort of channels coming in and things like that, or trade shows. I'm a big advocate of going to trade shows and just talking to people. And so obviously how I met you guys. And yeah, I think if you can spend 8 hours and you walk away with 5 minutes, and that 5 minutes turns into an idea and a thought process, which then evolves. And it's just about, you've got to put time and effort in. I think you've got to put time and effort in. But then it's no good if you don't understand your processes and you don't understand where you want to get to. And I see a lot of stuff in logistics, which I think is probably one of the most exciting sectors to be in this time as well, from a digital viewpoint and a sort of forever changing sort of market and situation. So I think fortunate in terms of that's where all the technology seems to be driving and leading sort of technology is sort of happening. And then, like I say, but not all of it is fit for purpose. But it's how you can then make it fit for purpose. Do you know what I mean? By sort of developing a base solution and sort of adapting it to your process to make it fit, because not everything always fits, obviously. But
in the way you talk about almost like this iterative process, it feels like there's got to be a huge level of almost resilience amongst the team and the operations as well. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, and I think that stems from the leader. So people that work with me will constantly say, "Hey, do you not switch off?" Which I can't, because when I've got an idea and I've got a roadmap in my head, I have to spend time to put that down on paper sometimes. Sometimes I have to like blur it, sort of get it out, just to sort of release it from the thought processes. So if you put me in a room full of whiteboards, I'd probably fill it with drawings and pictures, and some of my drawings are atrocious, by the way. Do you know what I mean?
I'm sure I saw one of your drawings the first time we came to visit you.
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah.
Yeah.
We was doing something the other day, and one of the guys turned around to me and went, your drawing started off pretty good, but then you kept going over in it and ringing it and ring fencing stuff, and now it just looks like a complete blur. I'll send you a picture of it later.
Yeah.
Still on board. And yeah, I think a lot of it stems from a passion side. I think a lot of it stems from giving that team confidence. I think from a team development side and people development side, I think some of the biggest things I've learned and experienced with colleagues is just giving them that confidence to see what's possible, giving them the confidence and the freedom to go out there and see what's out there, and getting them involved in the project and giving them a bit of responsibility and accountability and a bit of ownership, but with that sort of guiding hand and that sort of put your arms around them just to see them through the first one or two little projects that they might have an experience of delivering, or things like that. And you might be paddling like a swan under the table, but just sort of real sort of ultra calm exterior on top. And
yeah.
And try and think about scenarios and risks in advance. And yeah, I think a lot of it just comes down to experience, really. But there's no greater feeling, I have to say this from a personal viewpoint, to leave teams in a better position than what I found them, and more importantly, leave people in a better position than what I found them.
And that's kind of that boiled into one of my questions around what makes the ingredients of a great team for innovation.
I think people have got to see it. I think there's got to be a trust factor. So you've got to win people over to begin with. You've got to I think you've got to set a picture or a mindset in people's minds and a mentality in people's minds. I'm a big believer in mentality drives a lot of change. I think you can talk conceptually, but if you can see something physically, because I'm quite a visual person, so if I can go and look and see something, or go and visit and see something, then I'll take the people with me. And then that light bulb moment when they see what you see, or get the idea or the concept that you're seeing, is very rewarding, and makes life easier. They don't get it straight away, obviously. There's always some doubts, but like I said previously, it's just about sort of maintaining that path, about maintaining that confidence in terms of, no, that's where we're going to go, that's what we want to do, that's the roadmap that we're heading on, and set your stall out, really. Do you know what I mean? I think if you're clear with people where you want to go and you set your stall out in a controlled way, they sort of get on board. And I think success breeds success. And when you've got people, after doing one thing, and then sort of repeating what you're saying in terms of what we're doing next then, or what's the next challenge, you sort of realise that you're starting to turn that boat a bit. Do you know what I mean? And people are actually getting on board, or like I say, people coming to you and going, oh, I've seen this. Is this what you was on about? Or I've seen this. Do you think we could adapt this to this? And then you start thinking, well, actually, now it's almost becoming self-directed in terms of you look at, you know what I mean? You're seeing things that
Before
I'm
you're
not
almost
lying.
pushing the wheel to the slope, and then the wheels just starts to go off
Yeah,
on its own,
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great analogy. Yeah, great analogy. And I think once you've got that turn and you've got that like inertia moved out of the way, I think there's a big benefit to that. But obviously you've got to control it because you can't change the world overnight, obviously. But you try to, but you can't. But yeah, I think it's like I said a few moments ago. I think it's always I find it really nice to look back and reflect on successes, but more importantly, I'm more proud not of the physical successes that we've done, but I'm more proud of the people that have sort of brought along with me and sort of developed and helped sort of grow into to have good careers. Do you know what I mean? And left them with. I'm a big believer in capability. I suppose that's where it stems from, Will. I'm all about.
It's nice because that feels like a very optimistic approach, and actually you're seeing the best in people and trying to bring that out of them, as opposed to actually constantly thinking the worst is going to happen and the whole thing becomes a preparation stance. It's actually striving for the best.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. You do worry. Do you know what I mean? It's not all optimism, but and sometimes probably you are on permanent risk alert. But yeah, I think I got given an opportunity by a couple of people that mentored me, and I still hold in the highest regard. They're like sort of gods to me in sort of my own personal sense, and they saw something in me that gave me that opportunity to develop and grow. So why would I not do the same for people that I can see have got potential? And that could be someone that's already a high performer, but also you've got misfits. Do you know what I mean? People that are a bit rogue, a bit maverick. That you know what I mean? That you can simply get on board by just giving them a bit of accountability and a bit of trust. And sometimes they're your biggest sort of advocates and sort of channels for sort of getting your point across, because they sort of buy into it quicker because they like doing things a bit different. But like I say, for me, the team wise is important, and it's about giving them teams not just the tools but that capability, and I keep referring to this, that mindset of always wanting to push forward and always wanting to do the next thing or see what's coming around the corner, to adapt. Because I think if you can't adapt, you die. And I believe that in all walks of life. Do you know what I mean? From a personal viewpoint, you have to adapt to every situation. And I also think in a manufacturing world, logistics world, in the business world, being adaptable, people call it agile, whatever you want to call it. I still don't think people really know what agile means in a true sense, to be fair. I think if you can't adapt to that situation and adapt to that environment, and more importantly, someone like me that's had a few jobs, a few positions, you've got to be able to adapt to that business. Do you know what I mean? You can't always just bring the same toolkit. You've got to sort of adapt your thoughts and adapt your processes and adapt your mentality to the way that business operates to begin with, and then start to make the change thereafter.
So then when we're talking about the barriers to implementing that change, are there a couple of problems that you're always facing when you come into an operation, or is it totally dependent on where you are?
I think that's a good question. I think a lot, from experience, I think a lot of the issues are always the same. In terms of operational issues, so people, in terms of resource availability, I think capability, get back to capability, but what I mean by that is core skills, so sort of competency based, that's probably the better word, competency based sort of skills of people to do the basics, and an understanding of the basics. I think that's something that you have to establish quite quickly, just to get a level of sort of performance that is consistent. I think there's always a reluctance in any business to change, and that's probably a common theme you've heard with many of the people that you spoke to. And when I say that resistance to change, I also mean a resistance to spend money. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
because not everything in the first instance makes a return. It could be step 1 of 4 before you get the full benefit. And you have to very much be a good salesman in order to be able to see people the end goal and sort of say, you might be giving this money now, but you know what I mean? I'm going to need this there, that there. But at the end of it, this is what's going to happen. And as long as I think you can buy people into that sort of mindset and that approach, I think you start to gain trust. And I'm also a big believer, and I say this to everybody that works for me at the beginning, and it gets back to the point I made earlier, success breeds success. So people will, to begin with, when you're new into a business, give you that sort of, okay, let's see what you can do, and give you a bit of, okay, we'll give you like a bit of money to spend, we'll give you a bit of flexibility. But then I think if you deliver, the next time you ask for something, or the next time you plan to do something, you've got that trust factor. Well, he's done that, he achieved that, or the team achieved that. So, yeah, what do you want to do next? I want to do this. Yeah, okay, believe in that because you've done this previously. And then it just snowballs and you get up to bigger, better things. So, some of the things we've done in the past, like automated vehicles, brand new warehouses, brand new production fleets, developing sort of technology partners with some of the sort of safety barrier companies and things like that. That wasn't by luck. Well, some of it was by luck, just in terms of conversations like this, really. But it was all about, well, this is what I want. I'm very clear about what I want and very articulate in terms of that's what I want. Can you deliver that? Can you comply or not comply? If not, why not? And what you're going to do to make sure you're sort of in line with what I want to do. So, like I say, just don't accept what's coming off the shelf or what they're prepared to give you. Actually challenge it back and go, well, no, I want this or I want that, and try and find me this and try and find me that. And then internally, I think it's about stakeholder management. So if you can manage your stakeholders well, and I think if you can clearly, like I say, put across where you're going and the roadmap that you're going on, but you can also give them confidence. Look, last time I came to you, we did this, and we've achieved this, and we've achieved this, and achieved this, and you almost become like a walking roadshow. Do you know what I mean? So that when you get sort of visitors round in a couple of companies, I think success is when the warehouse is the main focus point rather than the production area. And people want to spend more time in the warehouse and logistics setting than they're doing production. Sort of gives you the impression that you're doing something right. Rather
Thinking
than
about it, that might have been the way we were edging when we first visited you.
Yeah. Because everyone just like, when you think about these guided tours, a lot of it's just focuses on the front end, doesn't it? In terms of, oh, this is how we put the thing together, and this. But no, you know what I mean. Someone once said to me that a good production system is only as good as its logistics system, and I'm a firm believer in that. And I think there's a lot of things that go off behind the wall that people don't see. And I think from a logistics and warehouse and supply chain viewpoint, you can have to manage about 15, 16 different variables to give your internal customer just one input. So managing them sort of variables and understanding them variables is quite critical and important to sort of cover.
So for the first time you walk into an operation that you've not worked at before,
yeah,
and your aspirations are towards this super efficient, almost automated like vision.
Yeah.
How are you going from A to, Z? Like, how are you thinking about that when you're first arriving?
How am I thinking? Probably too much thinking in time in some instances. Like I say, it can become quite. You become quite obsessed with it. You become quite sort of.
Is it a case of, are you walking through your own processes and then picking bits out? Yeah.
Continually. Yeah. Yeah, I'm absolute definite firm believer. Conversations, just conversations, talking, walking, standing. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes people will see me. I just stand and watch. Do you know what I mean? You got two of them and two of them, aren't you? And one of them. So just use them in that. Just use them in that order. My old man always taught me. So I'm a firm believer in that. So sometimes I'll just stand and observe. And I think also, obviously, in a world like this now, like you and I, where we're talking on Teams, sometimes I have to walk and talk with people to sort of. I'm very sort of conceptual, and I want to do this and I want to do that. It's always got me moving. So if someone could talk to me an idea and I'm like, can you draw it? That's probably the first thing I'll always say to somebody. Can you draw it? Because your drawing's probably better than mine. But more importantly, can you show me? Do you know what I mean? And that's where I think we've hit it off in terms of relationship between you guys and myself, in terms of you've always been able to show me. Do you know what I mean? In terms of, I'm thinking about that. What do you think? And then yourself or Annie or Alex or whatever have always come back and gone, well, we've got this potentially, and we've got that potentially. Oh, that's interesting. And then your mindset just develops. Do you know what I mean? The conversation gets developed. And yeah, I think one of the biggest compliments is sort of like last week, where Annie rings me up and says, we've got a potential to do something. Would you be interested?
Yeah.
And I'm like, Annie, you already know the answer, don't you? And she's like, well, yeah, but I just needed to run it past you. Obviously, we're going to have a meeting today and a discussion around potentially where we can do it, and hopefully share with your guys. Unfortunately, obviously you can't be in attendance, but try and share that, what I can see with your team, to then try and dissect it into some sort of future business stroke sort of support and assistance to help us get where I want to get to, and where the business wants to get to, really.
See, this is the thing. As a kind of technology integrator, I feel like MiTEQ, as a team, we spend a lot of time trying to work out how we can almost be better stewards for the customers. You know, how can we make sure that we're getting you guys to where you want to be? And is it a case of moving out the way and just listening to what you want and delivering on it? Or is it a case of trying to drive new ideas and this sort of thing? I mean, how can people develop great relationships with their suppliers that breeds innovation?
I think you've got to be. I think you've got to be transparent. I think you've got to manage that expectation of what you expect early doors. I think if you're talking from a point of experience as well, so it's easier for me to have a discussion with you type of guys. And I'm not the most technical person in the world, don't get me wrong. Do you know what I mean? Some things I just don't get, but I get it from a visual sense and I get it from a process sense. So like a bit of a third eye in terms of like process type observations. I don't know how it'll work. I just sort of go, I want this to talk to that and this to talk to this. And yeah, that's easy, isn't it? In my world, it's like, yeah, you can do that. Well, no, it's a lot of work, Aid. Well, it's not really, is it? Yeah, but it can't be done. Yeah, but if it could, how would you do it? And then you start to develop that conversation. So I think as long as you, and I'm also a firm believer in sort of personal relationships as well. So you sort of get to feel, do you know what I mean, people when you talk to them on a regular basis, if you can get on with them from a social side. Because I think if you've got common interests, a common sort of bit of banter, do you know what I mean, a bit of a personality, you're not just a robot. I think you can talk frank and honestly, and you know me, I talk frank and honestly when I want to. And as long as people don't take offence by that, and people get that that's your character and that's your personality, I think it grows from there. And I think, and like I say, when you're talking from an experience and go, and don't try, and I'm a big one in don't try and pull the wool over my eyes. Do you know what I mean? I think if you don't know the answer, just tell me, and then let's just work on what we do. Or if you're going to go, well, let's go away and look at it. I trust you that you're going to come back and, you know what I mean, say it can be done or it can't be done, or it can be done, but do you know what I mean? And like I say, not everything is black or white. So not everything's got a process, not everything's got a specification. Do you know what I mean? Some of it is just literally getting in a room, getting a whiteboard and going, well, I want to think about doing this, and how do we, and we've got to link this together, and oh, let's go and walk. Let me show you what I actually mean? And then you walk it, and then people go, oh, what about this? And then it just develops and evolves and develops, and it just turns into an animal. A bit like your analogy, it just becomes like a rolling sort of rolling wheel, but it's just getting that wheel sort of going uphill to begin with. That's the biggest thing. And yeah, I suppose I'm quite lucky. I must be doing something right, because I keep doing business with the same sort of people. So I've got a sort of circle of trust of people that I know will deliver what I want, and sort of will work.
It almost feels like from a customer side, being transparent with the supplier about what you want and need, and just trying to understand your own vision is really helpful. And then from a supplier side, it's like, again, can we show you things you haven't already seen? Can we be proactive? Can we take you to the places that you're trying to go?
Yeah, 100%, absolutely. And not as you've probably experienced with all customers, Will, the vision isn't always clear. I've got an idea, it's a bit fuzzy, it's sort of, I can see it in the future, I can see it in the peripheral vision, but I don't really know what it fully looks like, but I've got an idea what it looks like. And that evolves over time and develops over time with the right people at the side of you, within your team, and the right people working with you. And I also think, what was I going to say? I also think that, oh God, what was I going to say? I think I was going to talk about sort of, I think if people can,
the relationship between your people and the supplier.
I think if a supplier can then help you with that, take the blurriness away. Do you know what I mean? And sort of gets where you're going to, but then helps you sharpen the edges. Do you know what I mean? And sort of takes some of the fuzziness away in terms of what you're thinking conceptually or long term wise, and sort of buys into that and goes, oh, okay, I think I know what you're doing. I think I know where you're going. But then comes back to you and breaks it down to go, right, so rather than trying to boil the ocean, because I'm terrible for spinning 15 plates. Do you know what I mean? Terrible. And I know that's a personal thing for me. I need to sort of wane in, but I also look at that in terms of probably that's where my success comes from, because if one falls, I've still got another one. Do you know what I mean? But they're all tied in together, so it's like 15 plates on one thingy, but they're all tied in and they're all interlinked in terms of what I'm trying to do. And I think if people can come back, and where I get a lot of sort of, again, pleasure in talking to people like yourselves and other businesses that I've done with business with and continue to business with, and more importantly, when people ring you up on a social level. So when you've got suppliers that actually then turn into like social contacts, and if they're in their area, will ring you up to go out for a drink, and in a social way, nothing underhandedly or anything like that. I think that makes a big difference. That you've got that sort of trust in terms of that relationship. It makes a big difference. And if you pick up the phone, you straight away, you're back into that like banter, and you straight back into that sort of, how you doing? Do you know what I mean? What about, and a bit of a bit of a banter type thing. But I think if a supplier can bring something to the game where, like you say, you might not have seen it yet, you might not have even thought about it, you might not even know that it's actually physically or practically possible. I think that's a mark of a good sort of relationship and supplier relationship, where they might be working on something with one customer, but are thinking of you in terms of how, oh, that'd be good for this person as well. And I think that's a mark of the relationship in terms of sharing ideas and stuff like that. And I always tell funny stories, and whoever listens to this or watches this will laugh. I used to have a relationship with a guy, and I'd be literally posted, a couple of guys actually, and I'd see stuff on media or news, and because I've got like multiple channels coming through to me, and I'd be like linking him through, going, oh, I want this. And it'd be his product, and he's like, we've not even launched it yet. I don't even know anything. I don't even know anything about it. How do you know this? And I'm like, well, it's here. I found it. I want to be able to do this. So, and it's like that. I didn't even know this existed, and things like that. So it's sort of like fun, and you know what I mean, becomes a bit of a practical joke when you're finding out about stuff from some of your suppliers that, because they're big organisations, they don't actually know is actually taking place or marketing can sometimes release stuff without the product managers actually knowing that these things are happening, and again that can sometimes evolve.
It feels like you always have your finger on what's hot. Like you seem to know what's up and coming and where you're going in a way that a lot of other people don't. I mean, right now, what's hot in the industry right now?
I think for me, the thing that excites me at the moment is the AI stuff. That I think, because of being mechanically orientated, equipment is always something tangible you can touch. Do you know what I mean? So I think the tote to person stuff's really tote or material to man type stuff. I think is really exciting and something we're going to look at heavily in the business that I'm in at the moment, because we see the benefits of that. And I think that's a challenge. So it's a challenge to myself as well, to try and adapt that into the business. So I don't just, like I said previously, I don't just go over old ground and bring in stuff that I've done previously because it's easy because I've done it before. You know what I mean? You've got to adapt your solutions for the environment that you're working in. So equipment, I'm always keeping an eye on equipment, safety equipment, particularly around sort of material handling equipment, stuff like that. I'm always hot on, and pride myself in that, to be fair. I think.
And where is that
safety is always my first priority in anything from a sort of warehouse and logistics viewpoint. So that can be from sort of pedestrian truck interactions type thing, driver support systems, anything that keeps people safe in that environment. I've seen some horror stories, and I've had a couple of sort of not tragic accidents, but potentially could have been if it had gone the other way, and that sort of then changes your mindset for.
Can you talk me through one of those kind of occurrences and how you then made it so you wouldn't make it happen again?
Yeah, no problem. So a particular example, I remember it. I still remember the sound basically. So I was walking out of my office to get a coffee at the canteen over at the site that I was working on, and next to me I heard this massive bang, crunch. Basically ran round to the dock, and basically there was a counterbalance truck literally hanging with its forks on the trailer and its wheel on the dock. So basically what had happened, the truck had pulled away as the truck was entering the trailer, so what they call a drive away, and it literally pinned him in fresh air. Now if that had turned over and fell over, we'd had a fatality. Now to see that and experiencing that just changed a switch in my head, and then we moved towards on the trucks. We moved in the end towards, and this was like a 3 or 4 year process, which allowed us to sort of get nominated for Safe Site of the Year award at the FLTA, and got us up to gold standard in terms of ROSPRA for the facility and things like that. So we went and we put combi locks in the docks to lock in the trucks. We went for the best truck system that you could buy, a whole new fleet of trucks. We had pedestrian truck interaction systems, so badges that alarmed, slowed the trucks down, interactive speed zones with the trucks, so when they were entering certain zones it slowed the trucks down. And a lot of this was great from the driver's perspective in terms of adapting their behavior, because you know what I mean, because obviously it's only as good as sort of people's behaviors to those systems. So again, really sort of understood the risks from when that happened, so we did a full suite of risk assessment, got independent people in to come and risk assess us, and basically chuck the book at us to go, these are where your gaps are. Do you know what I mean? Because you've got to be open and honest with yourself. In fact, we're doing that again at this my current employee in a couple of weeks. We've got someone coming in independently, and I know where the gaps are, but I want them to reinforce it.
And then in that circumstance, what were the tangible outcomes? How could you tell that had worked for the business?
So like I say, we got nominated for Safe Site in terms of demonstrating our sort of health and safety, and then we were 5 years gold on ROSPA. Brilliant. Which ain't easy to achieve. And when you looked at the submission of it, and we did some great things across the plant, but probably 80% of it was all what we'd done in logistics and warehousing. Do you know what I mean? And that was all down to the team. As I always said, I just wrote the checks. The team did all the implementation and stuff like that. And same, I think the other thing as well is obviously because we had a big warehouse at the time, sort of up to 15 meters in height, we developed a rack detection alert system with ASAFE and Rackeye. So again, they saw trust in us to help them develop their system to avoid sort of rack collapse, which again allowed us to pinpoint where we'd got hotspots and zones, and just using the data really to allow us to sort of identify the risk. And I think that's where, getting back to your question in terms of what excites me, I think AI excites me because I think that, in my opinion, Industry 4.0, 4.1, 4.2, whatever we're at now, I think there's still a lot of businesses that are still at 1.0. And I was having this conversation with Annie yesterday, actually, and big data is a myth. I really do believe this because I've not seen anybody, and everybody I talk to, anything I see like in terms of analytics, whatever, I always sort of draw towards them and have a look, and no one can really sort of present to me or show me a fully interactive sort of big data analytics system without having system interface issues or a big piece of work in terms of pulling all the different systems together. And some people don't want to release this information and some people don't really want to release that information. So my sort of biggest intangible, not tangible, because product's product, I think the biggest intangible for me that I would like to be able to get at the end of all this is to be able to put that something in around sort of an analytical real-time information system that allows me to make decisions, but more importantly makes my team available, enable my team to make decisions in real time. And like I say,
actually,
I think.
Would you almost say that that's an industry theme to some extent, that the more technology that everybody's implementing, yes, they're getting those immediate efficiencies, but actually in the long term, being able to channel that data to hear what they actually need to hear at any given point in time is almost one of the biggest challenges because there's so much noise.
Absolutely. And I think I can only think of a couple of people who offer a total solution. So be that, do you know what I mean? Be that equipment, trucks, warehousing, whatever. They're all different providers. They've all got their own niches. But like you said, they're all spitting data out. And I'm still looking for that person that can come to me and go, I can pull all that together for you and do it like this. And that's not through data analysts, although I always like to have a good data analyst around me. Do you know what I mean? Crunching data. Because, like I say, I'm good at drawing graphs, but I just don't know how to put them together. But to avoid it becoming a cottage industry, to make charts, not parts, as we used to say, and have that information available, I think you're right. I think it's I'd like to think it's an industry sort of wide thing, because I've been to a lot of things and I read a lot of things, and like you say, I like to think I've got my finger on the pulse on a lot of stuff, and I just can't see anybody evolving to that level of advancement. I think people are, and I think from a manufacturing logistics viewpoint as well, I see a lot of development around retail and e-commerce, but not all of that can be adapted to manufacturing settings. And this is what I'm saying in terms of adaptability and being able to change what someone sells off the shelf to get it to fit. So a lot of providers aren't prepared to make adjustments to get it to fit your environment, and that's where those that are, I'm prepared to do business with and I'm prepared to have a relationship with, because they're not just trying to sell me a solution, but they're trying to sell me a solution, but they're trying to sell me a solution that is fit for purpose for me. Not me have to re-engineer all my process to accommodate them, if you know what I mean. And I think that's
kind of wanted to, whilst we've got a few more minutes, ask you if you were speaking to yourself from 5-10 years ago at the beginning of your journey, and you could have communicated kind of one message to yourself, what would you have said?
Don't do it. Don't do it, because it will ruin your thoughts for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, assume you have to do it then.
Yeah. I think it would be, looking back, it would be take advantage of every opportunity, because I'm a firm believer that people and opportunities come into your life for a reason. Do you know what I mean? I'm a big believer in that from a personal viewpoint. Have belief in yourself. Don't think you're a bit of a weirdo that, do you know what I mean? Dreams big and can't achieve it, because it can be done. And don't move away from your beliefs and what you want to achieve. You know what I mean? If you think it's possible, it's probably possible. It's just you know what I mean? It's just finding someone that shares in that thought process to make it possible. And I think that all stems from, you don't have to know everything. Like I say, I'm not the most technically minded person. I've got a bit of an engineering brain in my head and a mechanical brain, and I'm more process sort of orientated. But from an IT perspective and things like that, I'm not great, but I sort of know how things link together. But that's why I employ good people and work with good people to solve them problems for me. So yeah, I hope that answers the question. So trust yourself. Don't move away from what you want to deliver, and believe in what you can achieve, and get good people around you as well, which is always the same, isn't it? You've got good people around you, and at the same time, make good people.